All right, welcome back. Dr. Omar Brenda joins us next. He's a former national coordinator for the National Social Investment Program, that's the NSIP. Also, former secretary, that's State SSG, that's the one we call SSG, to Adamawa State. Good morning and thank you for coming. Happy New Year to you as well.
Good morning and Happy New Year, Maupe. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah. But I like the weather for this New Year, though, in Abuja.
Yeah, it is.
I like it. It's nice.
He's just experiencing it for the first time.
Yeah, it makes sense. I love it. I hope every other thing goes that way.
I was going to start with this news because the president has started work immediately. Yesterday, he started with the signing of the budget and his speech to Nigerians. And then today, we're greeted with the news of somebody being suspended at the National Investment Program, Social Investment Program, which you worked on. And I'm just wondering whether, I don't know if you've heard the news first. Is this the first time you're hearing it?
It's the first time I'm hearing it.
It's the first time. And it's over accountability. As someone who's worked on that program, listening to that sort of news, even though you're just hearing it, how is it hitting you?
Well, like most government things, the appointment for the national coordinator was just not long ago, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether the agency itself has actually taken off. What I mean by that is that an agency is an entity, an institution of government backed by law. So it has its own board, it has its own executive officer and accounting officer, it has its own management, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure. I mean, I left the place some time ago, but I don't know whether that is there. Secondly, I'm not sure whether the dynamics of the institution can incur this particular phenomenon of misappropriation, because the budget has just been approved.
Yeah.
What they inherited was the 2013 budget, which you remember, 2023 budget, which there were, some of the money was mopped up and then it was not returned, and there's so many things. I mean, at the time when we left or when the new minister came in, they were struggling to get the money back from all kinds of sources. Whether the money is now back and then they've started, because I'm not aware that the president is talking about rejigging and reintroducing school feeding program. Yeah. The NPower program has not really taken off. The credit packages are all being planned now. So how is the misappropriation, unless if the misappropriation is historical? Because I learned that the lady was also a public officer before her appointment.
So the NSIP, while you were there, was it under the president? How did it function? Because remember, not long ago, the Senate was talking about moving it to the presidency, and that being the presidency or not doesn't stop their oversight function. Yeah,
you see, the NSIP, I think, came up after a very rigorous study and research in 2015, and it actually took off in 2016 in the office of the then His Excellency the Vice President. It sort of scaled through from 2016 to 2019, when the new Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was created back in August 2019. Then it was moved as part of the then president's strategy to coagulate all the major institutions to do with destitutes, to do with vulnerable people, to do with poverty in one place, so that you can be able to facilitate the synergies and the partnership that we're talking about. So at that level, the program was executively run in the office of the minister. But because it is in the ministry, it does not work like an agency, because the accounting officer is the permanent secretary, while the chief executive officer was the minister. I was only a technical advisor, to be quite honest.
Okay. So now, let's read this. This is the part of the statement that was released signed by Ajuri, the president, Ajuri Ngelale, the president's spokesperson, and it contained the president's directive to the MDAs. And in that, it says here, if we could pick it up, all MDAs have been directed to take responsibility and provide monthly budget performance reports to the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, which in turn shall ensure the veracity of such. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy shall hold regular reviews with the Economic Management Team, and in addition, I, as the President, shall chair periodic economic coordination council meetings. So he's giving the MDAs the marching orders now. Besides him saying earlier on in that retreat, look, put simply or paraphrasing, you shape up or you shape out. So he's again saying here now that he's going to be presiding over so many things. It means that we expect a lot from the ministries, the MDAs now. So when you read this kind of narrative, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I think this is very good that is coming from the president himself. Because you see, running government affairs, particularly running the MDAs, you have various levels of leadership. The president sits right at the top, and the image of the president, his omnipresence, is actually through the ministers. Every minister represents the president in that sector. And that's why the Constitution itself says every state should contribute a minister, meaning once you have a minister, you have a president's present in your state. And therefore, so, and then the MDAs, many of the parastatals and the agencies are under the minister. There are some which are extra ministerial, they are under the president. So for the presidents to say, look, I have signed the budget, meaning I have allocated resources for you on the planned programs within this fiscal year, and I will not condone any laziness and so on and so forth. It is the president asking for people to be technically prepared. You cannot deliver this if you are not you're not shaped up to be a leader. A minister should work very closely with their permanent secretary. The permanent secretary should have all their directors coagulated as a team. Once you have frictions between minister and permanent secretary, this particular directive may not go down very, very well. So as a leader, you have to calm down. There are instances when you need to condense to a level. There are instances where you need to pop up to a level so that you come at par. And that's why you have to hold management meetings. Your plans should be very well, your procurement planning, your procurement processes to get no objection. You have to send your memos to the Federal Executive Council. All has timing standards. And unless you are very, very well planned, you may find that you are achieving this towards the end of the year, and then it's very, very late for you to implement. Therefore, you are planning by now. Every ministry should have their procurement plans. So by the president's directive, the procurement plans for all the capital budgets, right, should have been in a booklet in every ministry. Any ministry that has not prepared their procurement plan up to this point, probably is already lagging behind.
The president says he will be having this monthly, we expect some sort of monthly meeting or report or something. So with this, if they don't plan well, some of them you see it happen at the end of the year. When is the best time to begin assessment or expect results from these ministries?
I think the value chain for project implementation is very, very clear. You have capital, you have recurrent. Recurrent is paying salaries and so on and so forth. This is regular. I mean, nobody plans to pay salaries and then you don't pay salaries. Otherwise, the whole place will be on fire. But for capital, you have to, I'm going to build a bridge. We're going to establish a center. We're going to do this. It's very clear that is the basis for the budget. You've gone and defended your budget. Now there's a figure attached to that. So you know what to do. So at this point in time, the president should ask a question. I want to see the document, ministry by ministry, agency by agency, on their procurement plans.
Their plan of action.
Their plan of action, this is it. It's literally procurement plan. I want to see that you have planned to procure 1, 2, 3. And the directors of procurement, coming from the Bureau of Public Procurement, every ministry has one of them, are the chiefs of these procurement plans. They should have a meeting and everybody should submit their plans. I am going to buy this, this is what I'm going to buy, this is their price, and so on and so forth, so that they can now take it through the due process. There are some in the ministry you can conclude it through the Ministerial Tenders Board. There are some that you have to take it to the Bureau of Public Procurement because of high level. There are some that you can implement because of the value of the resources that you require in the ministry. Minister can approve. There are some, even the permanent secretary can approve if it's below 20 million naira. But when it goes higher, approval limits can send you to the Federal Executive Council. If you don't plan, even your memo getting through to the Federal Executive Council to pass through smoothly can be a problem. Because sometimes a minister will say, hey, that project there, we have a similar project in my ministry. How come that you are not talking to us at the Federal Executive Council? President will say, the two of you are not talking, so you need to go and that will take you longer. You know, you have to go back and reconsult and so on. So these plans are absolutely necessary to make sure that ministers are talking to each other, permanent secretaries, everyone, they have what we call a service-wide meeting with the head of service. They should be talking to each other too. And then the directors, each of the directors planning of research, they have their own group, directors of procurement, they have their own group, directors of admin, everybody should, that synergy is what is going to make sure that the plan is smooth, implementation is smooth, so that you can be able to scientifically be able to provide the president, through your ministers, a comprehensive report of performance.
Well, we're still talking largely about implementation, and that's key, because, I mean, it's already been passed into law, and after law, you know, implementation is next. But one of the things we've seen is that the initial budget presented to the National Assembly, the final figure which was passed and has now been signed, you know, was increased by a significant trillion. So some people have, you know, taken objection with that, saying, look, they don't like the fact that the National Assembly has jerked it up. But looking at it, the National Assembly has said what we've done simply is that we've reflected what we think is a more realistic rate for the dollar. But even then, analysts are still saying, look, even the rate which they have reflected at 800 naira, it's still not realistic enough if you consider what is currently happening at the I and E window. So from what you can see in the benchmarks that we have allocated for this budget, even though it's already been passed into law, have we been realistic enough?
Well, every time you compare your figures or your money pegged with the dollar, you will always have problems, especially if you're like our country, you are a consuming country, you are an importing country, most of your activities are dollarized. And so the message, in my opinion, in this budget by the president and by the National Assembly is that let us minimize the dollarization. Let us internalize our own operation. For example, is it possible for Nigeria to say, flour millers, Nigerian farmers can supply you wheat? For that to happen, you know, agriculture and the research institutions will have to work to make sure that there are seeds, there are pumps, this water is managed very well, farmers are well trained. So you see how the value chain works to localize the budget, minimize the dollarization, and then the reality might even be better because the naira could even get stronger if we start producing ourselves. But if we continue to consume everything we need that is good has to be brought from out of Nigeria, you must buy it using dollar. And if majority of the budget or the larger bulk of the budget is implemented on this, on the basis of dollarization, you can understand people's concern about the exchange rate changes and instability affecting the budget.
But those kind of things are long term. I mean, if you were going to move from consumption to production, as was the anthem last year, that is going to take time. If you want to say wheat, bakers, for instance, millers, let our local wheat people, supply you. How much of that do we have? We see that even in the president's speech, there's still a plan. You don't plant today and reap tomorrow. It will take a while. In the meantime, what should happen? The indices can change anytime.
Well, you see, I know maybe the example with the wheat is a bit it's a bad example. But I can give you an example with rice. Rice, based on past policies, say the anchor borrowers, through the CBN supported by small-scale farmers, have actually built up the momentum to produce rice massively. Problem with Nigerian rice is the stones. But rice doesn't grow like cassava inside the soil. So where did the stone come in? It is in the processing. Because the rice is standing like that in the air. Mm-hmm. We cut it down and bring it down to the ground. We beat it with sticks to mix it up with soil. And then we sit down and complain that there is soil in it. What to do is that while it is standing, just cut it from there and take it up.
So no, you know what I mean? There.
This is now technology. This is now processing know-how. This can readily be available, if not available already. Why? As I always say, we don't have 250 universities for nothing. People, I know, discredit the education system. But no, the idea is the same way we scrutinize ministers and heads of agencies, we should also scrutinize vice chancellors. We should also scrutinize the heads of research institutions. Why should your university be producing unskilled people? You should question the vice chancellor. We should question the heads of the research institution. Why is it the technologies for processing rice is not coming out from this agency and that agency? This is the way to go to localize things.
As we speak, we know that we have more than enough millers.
Yeah.
But we don't have paddy.
Yes.
Paddy is a problem. We don't have enough growers. I don't know, from your experience, you've also worked in a state which is largely agrarian, Adamawa State. What precisely do you think needs to be done to incentivize those who are going to the land?
First, I think in our country, we have to understand that the world has changed from superficial guesswork. You have to use data. You have to be technically prepared. If you're not prepared, you have to use people who are technically prepared to do things. First. Secondly, we must understand that, just like we're talking, you have to plan things. You cannot just wake up and hope that, like rain, it will fall one day and then your crops will grow. You have to plan it in such a way that farmers require seeds, they require fertilizer, they require pumps, they require skills upgrade, and so on and so forth. When I was secretary to the government in Adamawa State, when we were implementing even the Anchor Borers program, this is only a loan thing. But some of the loans reaches the farmers after harvest. So you know that the plan was not very, very well. So we had to go back and ginger and fight and everything. So no, your loan processing calendar has to follow the agriculture production calendar. Money for tilling the land has to reach the farmer before he needs to till the land. Money for planting, money for seeds to plant has to reach the farmer before he plants. Money for fertilizer has to, that kind of. But you lump the whole money, you give it to the farmer at the end of the harvesting, he's still behaving as a subsistence farmer because he has to produce to survive, So these are things that can be fine-tuned very, very quickly. And what the president is saying that, look, ministers perform. It's not just perform. It is be technically organized, report to me and deceive or convince me that this is working, and you cannot be able to do that if you're not technically prepared.
Part of what we stumbled on, some documents, maybe like a template of what to expect from some of these ministries, so that when the president calls for their performance reports, so what that might contain, which will eventually bring up, there's going to be objective of whatever project they want to do, then there's going to be how much allocated to it, of course, what currency, the funding source, the project type, the status. So the template at the time, maybe at the time you were there, appeared pretty detailed in terms of what to expect, so you can track and know how much has been spent where. So is it likely that that same template, is it something that has been institutionalized? Would they use the same thing such that we know what to expect? And of course, you perish the thought of the word corruption.
Well, this is a standard internationally accepted template. It's called a logical framework. A project is an activity and you break it into sub-activities. If you say, I want to produce 10 tons of yam, this is just a project statement. But how you get it, you have to break it. I must have a piece of land. There must be people doing it. I must have seedlings to plant. Somebody must know how to make the mounds. If I need water, then there has to be, all that. Then the objective is, why do you need seeds? I need seeds to plant, and I need this amount of seeds to plant this hectare, because each crop has, even if you're optimum, this is how much you are going to get per hectare. We know that already. And down the logical framework, it is all very, very well detailed. In most cases, in my public experience, this is beautiful, prepared by agriculture, prepared by SMED, and prepared by ND. Everybody prepares this. The challenge comes in when the resources to be utilized for implementation, you need it. In most cases, it all depends on the income of the country, the oil income and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, when they have what they call as the JAC or the FAC, when they share it to states and federal, and then you find that this month we only got so million, but your plans for that month is probably 3 times.
But didn't they plan and then they budget and then they approve your budget? and then it comes to time when they will release the money.
Budget is only a number, not that the money is in a sack. There is no sack anywhere. Sack is generated. That is why President will say, customs, move on and generate it. Hey, all the revenue, I don't know whether you've seen the circular, 50% has to be returned. So the Minister of Finance, Minister of Planning, Minister of the Budget, they are busy squeezing the revenue generators to fill the bag so that they can share every month. Are you with me? So the budget is just an indication of Mr. President that, hey, based on my assumed income of so, and so, this is how I want to spend part of it. So the assumption is, this is how much oil you're going to produce, this is how the market is going to buy it, this is how much money is going to be there, this is how much custom is going to remit it, and so the bag, when you do the budget, it's like half empty, but you're planning a full bag. So by the time you dispense of what you get, you may get less, and you find that the Office of the Accountant General is getting letters. Ministers are going there, no, Accountant General. This is very important. President wants this project to be completed. Accountant General will say, well, honestly, what we have now is not. I'll give you 50% now. Let's wait and see. Then the minister will say, 50% is not going to. This struggle is part of the public system.
How come?
Yeah.
Because I know that several speakers, I remember the time of, I think 2003, thereabout, the speaker at the time says they usually have a lot of unspent budgetary funds. And when it comes to that period, they want to just spend it and not return it to the coffers. How do we have that when they're looking for money to execute projects?
This is towards the end of the year. In most cases, that's why if you observe, you'll find that traveling and conferences are intense around October, November, December, because it's so similar under the logical framework. It's all part of the project, but actual action. It's like when you say we must start implementing the budget in January. It's not like the money is sitting there in January. You want to start constructing the flyover, then the money is available. No, the money may be available, but in most cases it's not available. So this is the scientific nature of governing, in my opinion. When you are well planned, you can be able to say, even if I get 50% in January or February, I can be able to gather the momentum to implement this program. If I get another quota in February, March, April, I can be able to continue. This technical spreading of the implementation phases of the project is very, very important. So if you wait until you get money to implement, you may have a problem. If you plan and you do not orient your stages of implementation so that you prioritize things, first things, second things, third things, fourth thing, then you may also be in a problem. So what the president is saying is that ministers and heads of my agencies, go back, talk to your teams, logically plan how to implement these budgets, and make sure that at each point in time, if I ask you from the first quarter, I can be able to see that most of the things that I want to start by first quarter, they've been started. Don't come here telling me, oh, Mr. President, I didn't get enough money and therefore I don't start. I think that is the message.
No excuses then for the ministers. Okay, Ayo's got questions too.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. I'd like to ask you, sir, going by what the Minister of Finance said, in the report that we saw before you came on, when he was talking about the fact that government is trying to bring order to government borrowing. You talked, a little while ago about the fact that it's not like the money is stuck up somewhere waiting for MDAs to come and collect. So it speaks to the issue of revenue. And I've heard time and again the DG of Budget Office say we don't really have a debt or a problem. We have a revenue problem. So looking at the projections of government where they're expecting that the revenue is going to come from, going by what the minister also said, Minister of Finance, that we're trying to rely less on borrowing and more on revenue, and that even though we need to take the two together, the idea is to focus on revenue. Going by the projections, do you see us scaling up revenue as a nation enough for the federal government to be able to fulfill its promise of significantly implementing the 2024 budget?
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy New Year. Yes, this is a vicious circle. I believe in our country, if we are very, very well organized and we're very scientific, we can actually pop up the revenue generation. You see, if you look at the survival of enterprises or entrepreneurs in Nigeria, for me, I recognize 3 layers or 4. The first layer is the informal sector. These are my mother, making dudu oshun at home. She's extracting oil from groundnuts at home. She's frying kuli at home. She's making puff at home. It's an industrial process, but she's so informal that she does not have a shop. She doesn't package very well. Everything she does must be consumed very, very quickly. And her role in the economy is very, very weak. Unfortunately for Nigeria, this particular sector dominates the economy. You go to Igbo land, everybody, the informality is everywhere. You go to the southwest, the informality is there. You go to every part of the north, the informality is there. And I think what the Minister of Finance is trying to say is that we're going to mine this gold and be able to now start talking, how do we formalize the informal? What catalyst, what help do they require? How do you get Dr. Bindi's mom to package her dudu oshun to look nice so that it can be sold in Ghana, for example? So when you do that, then you can be able to ask for that naira and kobo in taxes, because she can see the benefit of the training. She can see the benefit of utilizing tools and equipment. She can see the benefit of more income because she's doing that. And by doing that, just by my mother inviting my auntie, her sister, to come and work with her, she's now created 1 job. So in line with Mr. President's renewed hope, wealth is being created, jobs are being created. So now when you get part of the informal entering the small sector, so they have a corporate affairs commission registration. They have probably 2 or 3 people as a team meeting every Wednesday under the tree to be able to talk about it. They have, so these are the ladders that you have to go from: informal, small, medium, until you reach the large enterprises, taking advantage of our materials, taking advantage of our market, reducing the dollarization effect. And I think if we do that, we can boost the revenue. But unfortunately, this process requires scientific approach. You need people who are studying this, who are generating data, who are crunching this data to tell us which way to go, which way not to go. Then we need the institutions that are producing massively, technocrats. People think Nigerian graduates are not good, they are not theoretical. I disagree. I'm also a lecturer in the university. The challenge is that when you bring them into this, and you take a young person, I've seen it in Npower, who has studied even economics, into a poultry house, in 3 months, you will see that he has changed. He's cleaning the dirt, he knows a little bit about chicken. I had some beneficiaries ask me to say, Oga, I didn't know that I can raise 200 chicken. No, it's not a big deal. And we've created some of this. So this is the way to go. But if the vigor, technologically and scientifically, is the momentum of that vigor is poked up in Nigeria, I can tell you that is what China has done. That is what is happening in India. And Nigeria, with its population, we must be able to learn how to mine these spots. And that is why all the sectors, all the ministries must realize this at the same time, so that they can be able to get synergized, so that when you talk of data, you find that everybody is using the same thing. Informal, small, micro, and so on.
Which you just added now.
Yeah, go ahead.
My apologies. Which is where the challenge is right now, that of collaboration.
Yeah.
The president has said that the partnership needs to happen with state governments as well. A lot of scrutiny is always on the federal government, of course, for obvious reasons. But it is in the local governments, in the state governments, in the states and the local government areas that the real development, the real impact of whatever the federal government is doing is going to be felt. And the states also have their own budgets as well. How do you think that the collaboration, the networking between the federal government and state governments needs to work, which it seems hasn't been working, for some time? Consequently, we don't have the kind of expeditious development that we have. How do you think we can have that harmony of federal and state governments working together at the various levels to have the kind of expeditious development that Nigeria needs desperately at this time?
Well, thank you very much. This is a very important question, and I can bring in some of the experiences I had when I was secretary to the government. When I moved to Adamawa State as SSG, I was purely a technocrat, not a politician. There was nothing that these politicians have not tried on my head to literally frustrate me, to kick you out and so on. But that is when your administrative skill comes in hand. You know, I knew that Adamawa State government had a poverty alleviation institution. All you need to solve poverty is that try as much as possible to give people skills and then let them use that skill for some kind of job, and that job should be gainful, so they are paid for it. But I know, coming from the federal system, that SMEDAN is also trying to do that using federal resources, and they have an office in Yola in Adamawa State. NDE is trying to do that too. The SDG's office is trying to do that too. Industrial Training Fund is trying to do that too. So with my own skill and experience, I went straight to the Federal Secretariat as the Secretary to the government. And I mopped up all these institutions around a table. I bought tea and mama cars and so on for them. They were very happy. We sat down and I said, look, this is the state where we all are all working. We need to ensure that we create 10,000 jobs. SMEDAN, what do you have in for us? Your experience and whatever. SMEDAN will tell you. NDE will tell you. And I can tell you, throughout our tenure, I managed to ensure that I sustain that group, and that is how you facilitate the linkage. It's got nothing to do with money and so on and so forth. It is the administrative skill. And I can tell you, we use data. Till today, I still have the data on every market in Adamawa State. When is the market day? What do you see in those markets? With pictures. And NDE was listening to me. I was listening to them. SMEDAN was listening to me. I was listening to them, and we were able to be able to help the Poverty Alleviation Institution in Adamawa State to function very, very well. So the models are there. But as I said before, the meeting of heads has to happen recognizing the target of Mr. President. When he says, I want to create jobs, he is not referring to Ministry of Labor. He's not just referring to Ministry of Industry. He's not referring to just Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. He's not just referring to Ministry of Agriculture. He's referring to all of them. How they come together now and create a platform of constantly comparing notes is the technical procedure. And they have a relevant director in the ministries called the Director of Planning, Research and Statistics. That director has to be professionally prepared to talk to other directors, and you can have clusters of people that can help us to achieve these objectives.
That director is going to be crucial to us getting the performance from the ministries, so exactly. Which we'll keep tabs on. Well, we have to thank you for coming on this morning, Dr. Omar Benda, former National Coordinator, National Social Investment Program, as the NSIP, former SSG to Adamawa State Government, and also NOTAP. We've not been hearing about NOTAP these days. What's going on? Anyway, I guess another conversation for another time.